All right, let's talk about how to actually get your brain motivated, especially on those days where you just don't feel like it. We're not going to talk about the usual guilt trips or bribes. No, this is about understanding the science of how to get your brain on your team willingly.
Oh, you know that feeling, right? You're staring at that big project, or maybe it's just an email you need to write, and your brain basically just puts up a giant wall. It just says, nope, not happening. You know you should do it, but it feels impossible. This whole explainer is for that exact moment.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The advice we've all heard our entire lives, the whole carrot and stick thing, well, it turns out the science says that's often the absolute worst thing you can do. It can actually sabotage your motivation. So we're going to unpack why it backfires and then what actually works. So first, let's talk about what we're all used to. We'll call this the motivation trap. And yeah, it's built on that classic carrot and stick approach that we all know so well.
The foundation of this old model is super simple. If you do this, then you get that. We call these if-then rewards. If you finish that report, then you get a bonus. It seems totally logical, and for some things, it is. But for most of the really important work we have to do, that's where the whole system just falls apart.
So why do these carrots and sticks fail us so often? Let's get right to the heart of where this old model completely breaks down. Okay, this is the crucial difference right here. If-then rewards are great for simple mechanical tasks. Stuff with clear rules where you don't have to think too much. But the second a task requires some creativity, some real problem solving, that very same reward system can actually make your performance worse. And look, this isn't some new theory. We're talking about 60 years, that's 60, of solid scientific research all confirming the same thing. For any kind of complex creative work, trying to bribe your brain is a really bad idea. So how do they backfire? Well, first, dangling a reward creates pressure, and pressure is the enemy of creative thinking. It also narrows our focus down to a pinpoint. We just see the reward and miss all the creative solutions in our peripheral vision. And maybe worst of all, it's a cheap, flimsy kind of fuel. The minute you take that carrot away, poof, the motivation is gone. So if that old model's broken, what's the fix? Well, the science points to 3 incredibly powerful drivers that come from inside of us. I want you to think of these as 3 switches inside your brain that you can actually learn to flip on command. Okay, the first driver is autonomy. This is our deep human urge to be in control, to direct our own lives. I mean, think about it. When you feel controlled or micromanaged, you don't do your best work. To be truly motivated, you have to feel like you're in the driver's seat. The second driver is mastery. This is that incredible satisfaction we get from getting better at something we care about. Our brains love the feeling of progress. In fact, research shows that the single biggest day-to-day motivator at work is just making progress in meaningful work. Even small wins count. And that brings us to the third driver, purpose. This is all about connecting our day-to-day tasks to a bigger why. When we feel like our work matters, like it's part of something larger than ourselves, that fuels a kind of persistence that you just can't buy. Okay, so that's the theory: autonomy, mastery, purpose. But let's get practical. How do you actually use this stuff? Let's walk through 4 concrete techniques you can use today to start flipping these switches for yourself. So here they are. To get a hit of autonomy, you can choose your own deadline instead of having one forced on you. For mastery, start a streak. The don't break the chain method that helps you see your progress. For purpose, just write a single sentence. And finally, we're going to talk about a very specific kind of reward that actually works. Let's just zoom in on that purpose sentence for a sec. There's this amazing story about an author who was totally stuck. His coach didn't give him some new hack. He just said, write one sentence for me. Tell me why you are writing this book. The author wrote it down, put it on his wall, and that one sentence became the fuel he needed whenever he got stuck. I mean, that's purpose in action. So what about that 4th technique? We're not throwing rewards away entirely, we're just changing the timing. Instead of that if-then bribe, we use a now-that reward. So it sounds like this: now that I've finished this awful task, I'm going to celebrate. It's not a bribe dangled out in front, it's a genuine celebration after the hard work is done. It reinforces the behavior without all that manipulative pressure. So what this all boils down to is a really fundamental shift in our thinking.
To build motivation that actually lasts, we have to stop looking outside of ourselves for a fix and start learning to generate it from within.
I mean, just look at this comparison. On one side, you have that fragile external fuel, money, grades, gold stars. They can give you a short burst, but they often kill creativity. On the other side, you've got the lasting internal stuff: curiosity, self-direction, a sense of meaning. That's the high-octane fuel that keeps you going for the long haul.
At the end of the day, this is the real takeaway. We spend so much time looking for the next productivity hack, but the real solution is so much simpler and honestly way more powerful. It's about consciously learning to flip that switch from relying on external pressures to tapping into your own deep drivers of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So I'll just leave you with this question. Forget about the huge, overwhelming goals for a minute. Right now, what is one small, even tiny choice you can make today to exercise your autonomy, to take back a little bit of control? Because that right there is where real motivation begins.